$100,000 at 24 invested and left alone becomes $3.4 million by 65 without adding another cent. I hit that number on a $52,000 salary in 2.5 years. This is exactly how I did it. Before we get into it, if this video shows you something real about how money actually works, hit subscribe and leave a like. It costs you nothing and it tells me to keep going deeper. Now let's get into it. I was 22 years old, sitting on the floor of a studio apartment I rented for $740 a month because it was the cheapest place within 35 minutes of my office. I was eating rice and black beans I had made in a pot I bought at a thrift store for $4. I was checking my brokerage account on my phone for the third time that week. The number said $61,400. I looked around the apartment. The furniture was secondhand. The couch had a stain I covered with a blanket from a clearance rack. The TV was a refurbished 30-inch that cost me $75. My car was a 2013 Toyota Corolla with 112,000 miles and a small crack in the windshield I had been ignoring for 6 weeks. My wardrobe was almost entirely things I had owned since college. My friends thought I was struggling. I was not struggling. I was building something they could not see. By the time I turned 24, that number crossed $100,000. Here's what I need you to understand before we go any further. I did not inherit this money. Nobody handed me a check. I did not win anything or sell anything. I graduated with about $8,000 in student debt and a starting salary of $52,000 from a job I got through a campus career fair. My parents helped partially with tuition, and I am grateful for that. But they did not fund my adult life. There was no trust fund, no safety net, no family money quietly compounding in the background. What I had was 20 habits. 20 boring, completely unglamorous habits that most people my age were ignoring or actively laughing at. According to Empower data from early 2026, the median retirement savings balance for Americans in their 20s is $42,500. I hit more than double that before most of my peers had finished paying off their first credit card. This is not financial advice. This is my story. These are the 20 habits. Every single one of them is something you could start this week on whatever income you currently have. Habit 1, I automated my investments the day after every paycheck before I could see the money. On the 1st and 15th of every month, $750 left my checking account automatically and went into a combination of my employer's 401k and a Roth IRA. I set it up during my first week at work and never changed the amount until I got my first raise, at which point I increased it. I never saw that money. It never entered my spending reality. My brain learned to live on what remained, which was roughly $2,100 a month after taxes, rent, and the automatic transfers. The Vanguard. How America Saves report found that participants who use automatic enrollment reach savings rates nearly double those who manage contributions manually. Automation removes the decision, and decisions are where most people fail. Habit 2. I tracked every dollar I spent in a notebook, not an app, a physical notebook. Every night before bed, I sat down for 5 minutes and wrote what I'd spent that day and which category it fell into. By the end of the first month, I had identified over $300 in spending I genuinely did not realize I was doing, subscription charges I had forgotten, a sparkling water habit at the gas station costing me about $75 a month. People who track spending save 15 to 20% more than people who do not, according to multiple behavioral finance studies. The notebook cost me $3, it saved me thousands. Habit 3. I cooked almost every meal at home and batch cooked on Sundays. 2 hours every Sunday, making 3 large meals that covered 12 to 14 of my weekly meals. My average monthly grocery bill was about $215. The average person my age was spending $350 on groceries and another $300 on dining out. My total food cost was roughly half of my peers. That difference redirected to investments at 8% over 30 years is worth approximately $360,000. Those Sunday cooking sessions were not about deprivation. They were about where I wanted the money to go. Habit 4, I kept my rent below 25% of take-home pay. Every personal finance source says 30%. I aimed for 25. My take-home was about $2,800 after taxes and before automated investments. 25% of that is roughly $700. I found the studio for $740, which was $40 over my target. I took it because it was clean safe and close enough to work to keep my commute short. My friends were paying $1,100 to $1,400 for nicer places in trendier neighborhoods. That monthly gap invested at 8% over 20 years is worth roughly $295,000. My apartment did not have a unit laundry or granite countertops. It had a working stove and a door that locked. Those were the only requirements. Habit 5. I drove a used car I bought with cash and maintained religiously. The 2013 Corolla cost me $7,900 from a private seller I found online. I had it inspected by a mechanic before buying, which cost $65 and saved me from 2 other cars with hidden problems. I changed the oil every 5,000 miles, rotated the tires twice a year, and replaced the air filter when needed. Total annual maintenance averaged about $550. 0 car payment. The average new car payment hit $767 a month at the end of 2025, according to Experian. My total annual car cost, including insurance, gas, and maintenance, was about $3,200. A typical new car owner easily exceeds $14,000. The difference of roughly $10,800 a year invested is worth approximately $1.3 million over 30 years at 8%. My car had a cracked windshield and a faded dashboard. It also had 4 wheels and an engine that started every morning. That is all a car needs to do. Habit 6. I used the library for books, movies, and audiobooks instead of buying or subscribing. My local library gave me free access to thousands of books, and through the Libby app, a massive catalog of audiobooks I could listen to during my commute. I read roughly 2 books a month this way. The average reader who buys books spends $250 to $400 a year. I spent 0. Beyond the money, the library habit changed my relationship with consumption in general. When you learn you can access something without owning it, you start questioning the premise of ownership across every other category too. Habit 7. I made coffee at home 5 days a week and treated myself to 1 bought coffee on Fridays. The Friday coffee was my ritual. I looked forward to it all week. It cost $5 from a local shop. That is roughly $20 a month. The average daily coffee buyer spends about $6 a day, 5 days a week, which is over $1,500 a year. My annual coffee cost, including beans for home, was about $280. The savings of roughly $1,200 a year is not life-changing in isolation, but over 20 years at 8%, it compounds to about $60,000. For making coffee and a $12 French press every morning. Habit 8. I never paid for a gym membership. I ran outside. I did bodyweight exercises in my apartment using a free YouTube program. I bought a used pull-up bar for $12 and a jump rope for $7. My total fitness investment was $19. The average gym membership costs $40 to $60 a month. Most gym members use it 4 to 5 times a month, meaning each visit costs $8 to $15. I worked out 5 to 6 days a week for free. The $60 a month I saved went directly to my Roth IRA. That is $720 a year. At 8% over 25 years, it is roughly $55,000. A pull-up bar, a jump rope, and a running path are worth $55,000 in future wealth. Habit 9. I negotiated every recurring bill at least once a year. Car insurance, phone plan, internet. I called each provider, told them I was considering switching, and asked what they could do to keep me. Consumer Reports found that 70% of people who do this get a reduction. I got reductions on all 3 in my first year, combined annual savings about $460. The calls took less than 30 minutes total. That is roughly $920 an hour in effective tax-free earnings. No side hustle pays that well for that little effort. Habit 10. I used cash for all discretionary spending. Every 2 weeks, I withdrew $200 in cash. That was my entire budget for dining out, entertainment, personal items, and anything that was not a fixed bill. When the cash was gone, I was done until the next paycheck. No exceptions. Physical money triggers the brain's pain of paying response in a way that swiping a card never does. Research consistently shows people spend 12 to 18% less when using cash. The discipline was not willpower, it was architecture. Habit 11. I bought almost everything secondhand. Furniture, kitchen supplies, casual clothes, electronics when possible. My entire apartment was furnished for under $850 through thrift stores and Facebook Marketplace. A coworker furnished a similar sized apartment at a furniture retailer for about $6,000. The difference went straight to my brokerage account the month I moved in. One decision, $5,000 immediately at work. Habit 12. I practiced the 24-hour rule on every purchase over $30. See something I want, wait one day. If I still wanted it 24 hours later, I bought it. If I forgot about it, I did not. This eliminated roughly 60 to 70% of my impulse purchases. Americans spend an average of $280 a month on impulse buys, according to Capital One shopping data. My impulse spending averaged about $40 to $50 a month. The difference is roughly $230 a month, or nearly $2,800 a year. The 24-hour rule costs nothing and requires no willpower in the moment because the decision is deferred, not denied. By the time the 24 hours pass, the emotional urgency has almost always evaporated. Habit 13. I unsubscribed from every marketing email the moment it arrived. Every promotional email is a trigger designed by a team of data scientists to make you spend money you were not planning to spend. I treated each one as an attack on my financial goals. Unsubscribe, delete, gone. Within 3 months, my inbox was clean and my exposure to purchase triggers dropped by roughly 80%. You cannot buy what you do not see. Habit 14. I deleted shopping apps from my phone. If I needed something, I had to open my laptop, log in through a browser, and navigate to the site manually. That friction, those extra 30 seconds of effort, eliminated roughly 40% of my online purchases. The purchases I did make were intentional. I never bought anything from a push notification again. Habit 15. I captured my full employer 401k match from day one. My company matched 100% of the first 3% and 50% of the next 2%. On my $52,000 salary, contributing 5% meant I received an additional $2,600 a year from my employer. Free money. I was 22 years old, and my employer was handing me $2,600 annually that required nothing from me except checking a box. 88% of 401k participants received an employer match in the fourth quarter of 2025, according to Fidelity. The ones who did not contribute enough to capture the full match were declining compensation. I was not going to be one of them. Habit 16. I opened a Roth IRA in my first month of working and contributed monthly. In 2026, the annual Roth IRA limit is $7,500. I contributed roughly $625 a month into a low-cost total stock market index fund with an expense ratio of 0.03%. I did not pick stocks. I did not time the market. I did not follow crypto influencers or meme stock forums. I bought the entire market every month, regardless of what the market was doing, and let compound interest handle the rest. Dollar cost averaging into an index fund is the single most boring and most effective wealth building strategy available to an ordinary person. Habit 17. I kept my phone for 3.5 years instead of upgrading every cycle. I used a phone I bought refurbished for $240. It made calls, it sent texts, it ran every app I needed. Over 3.5 years, I saved roughly $4,000 to $7,000 compared to someone upgrading annually on a payment plan. The phone industry's entire business model depends on convincing you that last year's device is inadequate. It almost never is. My $240 phone did everything a $1,200 phone would have done. The only difference was bragging rights I did not need. Habit 18. I said no to things I wanted but did not need. Not bad decisions, genuinely appealing opportunities I could technically afford, a trip with friends, a concert I really wanted to attend, a jacket I stood in front of a mirror considering for 5 minutes. Each time I ran the math. Not just the price, but the compounding cost. A $280 concert ticket is not $280 at 22. At 8% over 40 years, it is roughly $6,000. I became very selective about which experiences were worth $6,000 of future wealth. The ones that were, I attended fully and without guilt because I had evaluated the trade honestly. Habit 19. I used a high-yield savings account for my emergency fund. High-yield savings accounts in 2026 are paying roughly 4 to 5% APY. The national average on a traditional savings account is 0.39%. On a $5,000 emergency fund, That is the difference between earning $200 and $19 a year. Same money, same liquidity, same protection in a different container. Over 2.5 years, the high yield interest earned me roughly $450 extra that a regular savings account would not have generated. Habit 20. I set a zero-based budget every single month. Every dollar had a job before the month started. Rent $7.40, groceries $2.15, gas $65, insurance $110, phone $30, internet $40, cash envelope $200, investments $1,500, everything else allocated down to zero. If there were leftover dollars, they went to investments. The budget was not a restriction, it was a map. Without it, money wanders. With it, money obeys. Here's exactly where the $100,000 came from. Over roughly 2.5 years, my 401k contributions plus employer match totaled approximately $31,000. My Roth IRA contributions totaled approximately $15,000. Additional brokerage investments from windfall money and extra savings totaled approximately $16,000. Market returns across all accounts added roughly $12,000. My high-yield emergency fund sat at roughly $7,000. Cash from various sources contributed about $4,000. Total invested plus saved plus market returns equaled approximately $100,800 at age 24. 90% of that number came directly from 20 habits, not from a high salary, not from a lucky stock pick, from cooking rice and beans on Sundays, from driving a car with a cracked windshield, from living in a studio apartment while my friends leased 2 bedrooms in the trendy part of town, from saying no, from making coffee in a $12 French press, from writing every dollar down in a $3 notebook. Here's what $100,000 at 24 actually means. $100,000 invested in a total market index fund, earning 10% average annual returns, becomes roughly $3.4 million by 65 without adding another cent. Just from existing. Just from compounding. The 100,000 was the seed. Time is the soil. The 3.4 million is the tree. If I continue investing just $500 a month, from 24 to 65 at 10%, the additional contributions alone generate roughly 3.6 million. Combined with the original 100,000, my total portfolio at 65 is in the range of $7 million. $7 million from rice and beans, a used Corolla, a studio apartment, a $3 notebook, and 20 habits that nobody on social media would ever photograph. There's a moment I think about often. About 14 months into this journey, I was at a birthday dinner for a friend. Everyone was ordering cocktails and appetizers. I ordered water and the cheapest entree. My friend leaned over and said, half joking, half serious, "Are you okay? Do you need money?" She genuinely thought I was struggling. I had more invested at that moment than anyone at the table, possibly more than several of them combined. I did not correct her. I did not pull up my brokerage app and prove anything. I just smiled and said I was good. Because the thing about building wealth quietly is that you do not need anyone to know. The account balance is the validation. The compounding curve is the applause. The 20 habits are the performance. And the audience is just you checking the numbers once a quarter, watching the curve start to bend, knowing that every boring decision you made is stacking on top of every other boring decision in a way that will produce results most people call lucky when they finally see them. They are not lucky. They are the predictable mathematical consequence of 20 small behaviors repeated daily for a very long time. The personal savings rate in America sits at about 4.4% as of early 2026, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis. That means the average American keeps 4.5 cents of every after-tax dollar they earn. I was keeping roughly 45 to 50% during those 2.5 years. The distance between 4% and 50% is not a salary gap, it is a behavior gap. The behaviors are the 20 things I just listed. Not one of them required earning more money. They required spending less of it and redirecting the difference toward a brokerage account that did the actual work. The average retirement savings for Americans in their 20s is a median of $42,500. The average for Americans in their 60s is a median of $536,000. That median 60-year-old has spent 40 years working and has roughly $500,000 to show for it. I had $100,000 at 24. The compounding curve does not care about your salary. It cares about when you started and how much you fed it. 20 boring habits fed it enough to change the math permanently. If this video showed you something real about how wealth actually gets built, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to see it. Next week, we're going deeper into exactly what happens to that 100,000 over the next 10 years and which decisions will either double the curve or flatten it completely. The traps that wait in your 30s are different from the ones in your 20s. Most people do not see them coming. We're going to map them out before you arrive. See you there.